Greetings to everyone out there in the NoDQ galaxy. Welcome to the NoDQ recap of NXT for September 25th, 2019. This was the 2-hour edition of NXT. First hour was on the USA Network, and then the second hour was once again on the WWE Network. But starting next week, both hours of NXT will be on the USA Network. And of course, next week is the debut of AEW Dynamite. Next week going to be a very interesting week in the world of wrestling. A lot of programming. If you love your wrestling, you got a lot to choose from. You're going to have Raw on Monday. You're going to have Impact Wrestling on Tuesdays. You're going to have NXT and AEW on Wednesday. Thursday, you're going to have NXT UK. And Friday, you're going to have Friday Night SmackDown. So pretty much every night of the week, you're going to have some sort of mainstream wrestling, if you want to consider Impact mainstream at this time. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about week 2 of NXT on USA, the 2-hour era. We had a recap video from the first week, and then we had Undisputed Era up on a platform above the announcers holding up their championships. All 4 members of Undisputed Era with titles. Then we had the first match of the evening, which was Keith Lee versus Dominik man, it's hard to pronounce his name. Dijakovic. I am terrible at pronouncing these names. If I had to nitpick, this is going to be the Aaron Riff Nitpicks NXT video here. If I was going to nitpick, I think these wrestlers need to have easier to pronounce names if they're going to be mainstream. Dijakovic. I'm not even sure if that's correct. Dijakovic, something like that. I'm just going to call him Dominik. We're going to drop the second name. I'm going to pull a Vince McMahon and drop his second name. He no longer has a second name as far as I'm concerned. He's just Dominik. But then if you have Dominik, Rey Mysterio's son, becoming a wrestler, then one of them might have to change their name. And Psycho Jet Black just beat me to it. Rey Mysterio's son. Psycho Jet Black with a $2 super chat also says, is Damien Sandow more over than EC3? Well, duh. Damien Sandow was more over than EC3. Now, Aaron Rex, again with the stupid names. Aaron Rex, even though that one's not hard to pronounce, but still a stupid name. Aaron Rex, I would say, was not more over than EC3. But Damien Sandow, absolutely. We'll call Dominik Dijakovic. We'll call him Dominik, not Mysterio. How about that? Anyways, we had a tale of the tape, which I do like. It adds a little bit more of a sports-like feel to it. It's cool. It's a nice change of pace from Raw and SmackDown. This match was awesome. Keith Lee, I'm not really familiar with the guy. This is the first significant match I've seen from him. This guy's awesome. He can really move, and he's a big guy. He's like 6'3", 300-plus pounds, and the guy can do all sorts of crazy stuff. He could fly like a cruiserweight. He did this corkscrew dive over the top. He did a moonsault. And we had one really cool spot in the match where Dominik, not Mysterio, hit this avalanche Canadian destroyer from the second rope. And just the sound of Keith Lee hitting the mat was crazy. I will say I do agree with some of the criticism of this too. The spot looked really cool. It should have been a finish. I agree with the people that criticize these big spots not being the finish of a match, because then there's no real way to follow it up. Like, how do you finish a match after you do something this impactful and the guy still kicks out at 2? So I do agree with that. You know, the Canadian Destroyer seems to be overused. We saw it at All Out with the Canadian Destroyer off the ladder through the table. Everybody's doing it now. It was cool when Petey Williams was doing it as his finisher, but now everybody and their brother is doing a Canadian Destroyer. So I do agree with that criticism. Now, at the same time, this is the second week of NXT on USA, and WWE's trying to build up viewership for NXT, which is fine. This was a hell of a match. Keith Lee, I think, is going to be a major star on the main roster one of these days. And I still say Raw and SmackDown, it's the main roster. I know Triple H and people in WWE are trying to say NXT is this equal brand to Raw and SmackDown. They're running in Full Sail University. And the wrestling is good. And again, if I have to nitpick, I feel like after watching 2 hours of NXT this week, well, maybe like an hour 40, they went off the air early again this week. If I had to nitpick, I'd say my biggest issue with NXT is that I just don't feel there's real character development with these guys. And I know once they go on Raw and SmackDown, they'll develop more characters. But then again, what people like about NXT is the fact that it's just wrestling. Guys doing moves and whatnot. Match, few promos. That's what the NXT fans like. So if that's what you want, then NXT delivers. But I'm sitting here watching this 2-hour show, and I want some soap opera. I want some stories with characters that I can get emotionally invested in. Wrestling was great on the show, especially the first hour. Keith Lee and Dominik, not Mysterio, had a great match. Keith Lee picked up the win with his finisher. I'm not sure the name of it. It was this power slam type maneuver. And the other thing, which again, I don't really have a problem with, but sometimes I'm like, it's a little predictable. I feel like the winners are often obvious. And in this case, going into this match, and the reason this is because NXT does pretty straightforward ABC booking. Going into this match, Dominik had a 1-0 advantage over Keith Lee, and they were building this up with the commentary, making a big deal out of it. So to me, it was pretty obvious Keith Lee was going to win here to make it 1-1, which is exactly what happened. Again, it's nitpicking, but at the same time, it's straightforward ABC booking, so I'm not going to complain about it too much. Really strong match here, and I definitely see some big things coming out of Keith Lee. The guy is just a beast. And I love that pounce he did, that tackle he did to Dominik and sending Dominik over the ropes. Great spot there. Keith Lee's just awesome. I definitely see him being a major superstar. Power Packers 90 with a $2 super chat says, "Oh my God, one of the best big man matches ever." It was great. I mean, this match could have been on an NXT TakeOver pay-per-view. It was that good. And then we had a tale of the tape for Shayna Baszler versus Candice LeRae, which will be taking place next week on NXT. We had a recap of the end of NXT last week with the big brawl. We had Mauro Ranallo announce that next week's NXT episode on October 2nd will be limited commercial interruptions. So I guess USA Network is determined to get these numbers up, and we're going to have few commercials, which is good because it wasn't as bad this week. Last week, I was just getting sick and tired of those Pizza Hut commercials. This week, I don't feel there were quite as many, and there was a little bit more variety with the commercials, which is good. If we're going to get commercials, at least don't show the same commercial 5 times. I mean, if I'm not going to buy Pizza Hut after the first commercial, you play the commercial 5 times, it's not going to make me feel like I want a pizza anymore. Although maybe that's what works. I mean, maybe these companies do these studies, and the more they cram something down somebody's throat, people are more enticed to buy something. I don't know. I mean, they're successful corporations, so maybe psychologically it works to do it that way. But for me, if I want to go get Pizza Hut, I'll go get Pizza Hut. Showing me 5 commercials isn't going to change my mind. But that's just me. I'm sure other people are different, and that's why they do it. All right, enough of the pizza talk. Let's get back to NXT. We had the Street Profits do a little video package promo to hype up their match next week. Next week is going to be loaded. This week's NXT was more about building up to next week. Next week, you're going to have an NXT championship match. You're going to have the tag team titles, and you're going to have the women's title on the line. So 3 championship matches next week. Going to be a very loaded show going up against AEW. Next up, we had Dakota Kai, who made her big return. She had torn her ACL last year, and she looked really happy to be back. She picked up a win in an exhibition match against, again, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, Tainara. I'm not sure if that's the proper pronunciation, but basically it was just a showcase for Dakota Kai. I guess her gimmick is that she kicks people a lot. She did a ton of kicks, and then her finisher is not the GTS, but the GTK, the go to kick. This was fine, but I hope she does more than just kicks in the long run, just because I think it's going to get old quickly. Just like when you do super kicks constantly, if you just do nothing but kicks as your arsenal, it might get old after a while. But good stuff here from her. I mean, she looks like she's got some star potential. I'm not really all that familiar with her, but she looked good in this match. Power Packers 90 with a $2 super chat says, is Pizza Hut more over than EC3? Yes, that is for sure. I mean, I'm not going to knock Pizza Hut. The commercials get on my nerves, but Pizza Hut is great. I mean, arguably the best pizza chain there is, in my opinion. Although I really do like this place called Hungry Howie's. They have some amazing stuffed crust pizza. Just throwing that out there. I'm not sure how far out they're spread around the country, but if you have heard of Hungry Howie's, let me know what you think about them. All right, let's move on here. Enough pizza talk. We've been talking way too much pizza on this live stream. We had Matt Riddle versus Killian Dain in a street fight, what was supposed to happen on last week's show. It was a pretty lengthy match. The first part of the match before commercial was in the ring. And then after the commercial break, that's when we started getting the street fight portion of it. They brawled over towards the backstage area, and they did this spot where Killian Dain did a crossbody onto Riddle, and they literally crashed through the staging area, this platform wall. The only thing I didn't like about it, I thought it was a cool spot, but the only thing I did not like is it was so obvious they were doing this. Like, you could tell when they're fighting over there, you could tell the wall was gimmicked. That's the only thing I didn't like. I know, you're trying to do it for safety reasons and make sure the wall is rigged properly so they don't get hurt. But at the same time, like, it's so obvious where they're going with it. It's so overly choreographed. So that's my criticism of it. Again, nitpicking. I'd rather the performers do it safely than do something that looks unscripted, but it actually hurts the guys, if you know what I mean. And then we had a commercial break. When we came back, more carnage. They were fighting in the stands, and then Matt Riddle did a Broton through the table. They got back in the ring, and then Matt Riddle started using a chair. He did a knee to Dillian's face with the chair as an assistant, but Dain kicked out of it, and then Matt Riddle applied the Fujiwara armbar for the submission victory, which means next week Matt Riddle will get a title shot. And Chris Mace points out the Vader bombs from Killian Dain. I agree, that was another highlight of the match. We had Adam Cole come out afterwards. He had the championship. He shoved the title in Riddle's face, saying that Matt is not in his league and he will never be NXT champion. Then Riddle immediately put him in the armbar, and Cole tapped out. Undisputed Era ran out, and Matt Riddle took off. His music played. Crowd started chanting, "You tapped out," and that's when we had the first hour wrap up. Mr. Anderson says best pizzas from BJ's Brewery. I agree. BJ's is really good. That's an amazing pizza place. They have some great lunch specials. You can get a personal pizza and a salad for like $7. Pretty good deal there. But anyways, second hour kicked off with a recap of what happened with the Matt Riddle, Killian Dain street fight. The street fight was really good, although I wouldn't say it was like an all-time classic. If anything, I would say the best match of that first hour was Keith Lee versus Dominik, not Mysterio. I thought that was the strongest match of the night, in fact. But the street fight was pretty good, too. So the second hour, we had a Kushida and Imperium recap, and that was setting up a 6-man tag team match for the main event. Imperium versus Kushida and 2 mystery partners. We had Rhea Ripley, who is from NXT UK, versus Kaden Carter, and I've never seen her perform before. I'm a little bit confused about Rhea Ripley. So she came out acting like a heel. Her work was like a heel. However, the announcers were building her up as a potential opponent for Shayna Baszler. And during the match, they're saying she's sending a message to Shayna, which confuses me because Shayna is a heel. So if Rhea Ripley's a heel, why is she being built up as a possible opponent for Shayna Baszler? That's why I'm confused. Unless, it's going to be Candice LeRae winning the title and then Ripley is going to be her challenger. This was just basically an exhibition match, the kind of match you would expect from the 1 hour NXT shows, and again, going back to earlier, if I have to nitpick, these exhibition matches are fine. You build up your talent, but when you have 10 hours of wrestling, it's hard to commit and get invested in these exhibition matches. And I'd rather see maybe a promo from Rhea Ripley or something, or a video package. I don't know. I feel like we just had too many of these exhibition matches in the second hour, and I just really did not care about the characters. I wanted to know more about them and what makes them tick and what their characters actually are. Rhea Ripley, to me, looked like a female version of Pete Dunne, which is fine. Pete Dunne's great and all, but what is her character exactly? And then we had Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch against a team called Everrise from Canada. We had Chase Parker and Matt Martell comprising this team. No relation to Rick Martel, by the way. This match was, again, an exhibition. Didn't really care all that much about it. I like Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch. I saw them at TakeOver, one of the takeovers. I forgot if it was the Chicago one or War Games, but those guys are really good. But again, what are their characters? They don't have any character development, and it's hard for me personally to really get invested in it. And again, this is what NXT is. This is what people like about NXT. They just like straight wrestling. Guys going out there and doing matches and moves and all that stuff, which if that's your cup of tea, then NXT is great. But as a person who is watching 10 hours of wrestling now, I want to see the best of the best. I want to see not just great wrestling, but I want to see great characters and storylines. And that's what NXT is lacking at this point. Now, again, if you start doing that stuff, if you start making it like Raw and SmackDown, then it's not going to have the NXT feel anymore. It's kind of like ECW. ECW was all about the hardcore wrestling and being anti-WWE and WCW and doing the opposite of what they were doing, which worked for ECW. ECW had a cult following and people loved it. But EC3. ECW could never reach that mainstream level because it was catered to a niche audience. I'm starting to sound like Virtue now, but it's true. NXT, so far, they're still catering to a niche audience, and I don't know if it's going to lead to them doing consistently over 1 million viewers. I feel like they're probably going to be down a bit this week. They did very well last week. They did something like 1.2 million viewers. I don't know the exact number. It was close to 1.2 million. And it was a very good first week. It was better than what I was forecasting. Not a whole lot. I was going like 1 to 1.1 million. So it was a solid number. But this week I feel it's going to drop. And I feel like it's probably going to drop even more next week with AEW despite the loaded lineup. Because I think a lot of people are going to tune in to AEW for the curiosity factor. Let's move on here. Lorcan and Burch picked up the victory with their double team DDT. And then we had Diona Purrazzo. Again, these names, I struggled to pronounce them. And Chelsea Green, formerly, what was her name in Impact? She was the crazy bride in Impact Wrestling, but I forgot what name she used in Impact. And she's Zack Ryder's significant other. They were in the crowd. Again, it would have been nice if they actually did something, like some kind of storyline with them, instead of them just appearing in the crowd. But that's NXT's their whole shtick, have the guys show up in the crowd and whatnot. Next up, we had Cameron Grimes, no relation to Rick Grimes, versus Raul Mendoza. Psycho Jet Black with a $2 super chat says, is Nia Jax more over than EC3? That one's a tough one. I'm not the biggest Nia Jax fan. Just not so much her fault, because I think WWE booked her very poorly, but the promo she was cutting just did not resonate with me. And I think EC3, if given the opportunity, could cut a better promo than her. At this point, I mean, yeah, probably even an injured Nia Jax would be more over than EC3. Laurel Van Ness, thank you for that, Dapster. That was the Impact name for Chelsea Green. I totally forgot what it was. I just remember she was the crazy bride who was coming out there in the wedding gown every single week and being crazy. Anyways, Cameron Grimes, who was formerly Trevor Lee in Impact Wrestling, versus Raul Mendoza. Match was technically good, but again, I had a hard time getting into it. Another exhibition match, and what is Cameron Grimes' character? He comes out with a hat. I don't know what his gimmick is supposed to be. Raul Mendoza, just your standard cruiserweight look. Again, match was good, but I want characters. Like, I don't know what these guys are as far as characters and what their personalities are like. So for me, it was hard to get into the match. But this second hour was very typical of your weekly NXT show, a series of exhibition matches, video packages, and whatnot. So, I mean, to me, it's not must-see TV. If you're somebody who cannot get enough wrestling, yeah, this is good stuff. But if you're going to be limited to, let's say, if you're going to cut off at like 4 or 5 hours of wrestling a week, this is going to be at the bottom of the barrel as far as what you're going to be watching. You're going to want to watch the top tier stuff, which would be Raw, SmackDown, AEW, and we'll see what happens next week if they change things up with NXT, if they start doing higher profile matches, if they start doing more storylines. But yeah, this second hour was pretty much your standard WWE Network hour of NXT. Anyways, Grimes won with the leaping stomp, and interestingly enough, he got some boos, and I still don't understand. Is he a heel? Is he a face? Like, I don't even know why they're booing him. I guess they just liked Raul Mendoza so much, but again, I want to see characters. And finally, we had Kushida and his partners versus Imperium. I got mad here because Kushida introduced his partners. We heard sirens, and I thought Scott Steiner was going to come out. I seriously did. And I was like, holy crap. But then it was just Febreze or Breezango, whatever you want to call them. And they have new music, by the way, which I thought was dumb because the music was like the best thing about their act, and you take that away from them. But I guess in NXT it doesn't matter because they're not characters anymore. They're just wrestlers. So you had Breezango teaming up with Kushida, who was dressed like Marty McFly from Back to the Future. I guess that's his gimmick. He's a Back to the Future fanboy. Again, what's his character? We had Kushida pick up the victory for his team against Imperium. I really like Imperium's music, by the way. I think their music is really good. I like their whole act. I think that is pretty cool. After the match, we had Walter show up and attack Kushida. And again, this was a little bit of, I guess, character development, storyline development, where him and Kushida are building up a feud. And Walter's clearly a heel, yet the crowd starts chanting Walter. And I'm like, come on, guys. Like, can't you just at least play along and cheer for the babyface and boo the heel? I just find it annoying personally. So yeah, that was the end of NXT. I guess his gimmick is that he's a time traveler. Okay, so yeah, basically he's a Marty McFly cosplayer. No, great gimmick there, I guess. Psycho Jet Black with a $2 super chat says, will you watch NXT on tape delay and AEW live? Great question, Psycho Jet Black. So before I get to that, let's go ahead and do a letter grade for NXT. Definitely a step down from last week. I definitely recommend checking out Keith Lee versus Dominik, not Mysterio, and also the street fight between Matt Riddle and Killian Dain. Everything else, honestly, I thought was skippable. So I'm going to give the show a B-. I mean, it was solid 2 hours of entertainment, but first hour definitely better than the first one. Second hour, just it felt like an hour of television that had no competition. I'm curious to see what happens next week if WWE is going to shake things up and turn up the heat with that second hour and make both hours equally important. And they definitely have a loaded lineup for next week. So I'm thinking, the second hour is going to have the world title match. So yeah, I think next week things will definitely pick up. And this week was more about building up to next week. So I did expect a cool down from last week's show. The Game Is On 100 with a $5 super chat. So congratulations to the Game Is On 100. You are the new, reigning, and defending NoDQ super chat champion of the entire NoDQ galaxy. He says, what do you think about WWE giving space for shows from now on? I think WWE will be better in the long run. I give a show a B-. I will answer that question here in just a minute. Let me get to the letter grades in the other question. Let's do the letter grades here. So Kev Dog with a B, CC Drink with a C+, Power Packers 90 with an A-. Daniel gives it a D-. Wow. Ma Wrestling with a C, Mr. Anderson with a D, Kev Dog with a B+, Israel Diaz with a B, Tic Tat Tat with a solid B, Jeremy Dorset with a B, and Christopher Mace with a B- as well. And Radical Velocity says B- for the first hour. And Psycho Jet Black gives it an F. Wow. Caitlin gives it an A- for hour one, which I would agree. I would go with probably an A- for the first hour, and then the second hour was, maybe a C-, therefore averaging to a B-. Virtue's like, I'm going to watch Back to the Future now. So as far as next week goes, and I am going to answer the Game Is On 100's question here in just a second. As far as next week goes, I'm going to be watching AEW. I will be watching AEW live. I may try to go back and forth, but I don't want to end up screwing up my stream. So I will probably watch AEW, and I plan on recapping AEW on Wednesday nights. As far as NXT goes, depending on what they do, I mean, I'm definitely going to watch on demand, at least watch the title matches. And then maybe on the NoDQ review, we can do a recap of NXT. I'm sure Virtue's thrilled about that. But yeah, Wednesday nights, starting next week, I'm going to be recapping AEW. And then maybe talk about NXT on another stream. But yeah, I will try to keep watching NXT, but it's going to be tough for me to stay invested in 10 hours of wrestling every week. I mean, you got 5 hours for Raw and SmackDown, and then so 9 hours. And then if you include UK, which I don't watch, and I'm not going to watch UK, that's a full 10 hours of wrestling every week. And people are saying, yeah, this is great for wrestling. And it is if you want variety, you got plenty to choose from. But I don't know how anybody can watch 10 hours of wrestling a week. Like, I would lose my mind personally. And I would consider my fandom to be pretty high. But 10 is too much for me. I mean, I feel like I definitely would not watch Raw if I was not doing this for a living. So I'm trying to think. If I was not doing this as a job, I'd probably watch the Raw YouTube clips. I'd probably watch all of SmackDown. And then I would watch AEW and maybe some of NXT. And that would be it. But yeah, if I wasn't doing this for a living, I'd be cutting off a lot of Raw from my wrestling viewing. That's for sure. I would just watch the YouTube clips because 3 hours is way too long as far as I'm concerned. They should go back to 2 hours, but highly unlikely in all likelihood, as I like to say. Now, let's get to the Game Is On 100's question here. As far as WWE giving space for the shows, I think you're referring to, I could be wrong on this, I think you're talking about like how SmackDown's going to be on Fridays now. So you get a little bit of a break. You have, as far as WWE programming goes, you have Raw on Monday, NXT Wednesday, and then you have SmackDown on Friday. I do like that on one hand. On the other hand, I'm a little annoyed, just for me personally, for what I do, because we usually do our predictions. We record predictions on Tuesday nights after my SmackDown live stream. The problem with that now is that SmackDown's on Friday, which means we either have to wait until after SmackDown on Friday night to record our predictions or record on Tuesday, not knowing the final storyline build up on the SmackDown episode. I like posting the videos a good 4 or 5 days before the pay-per-view just because I want people to have time to watch the videos. It adds up to more views for the videos. You know, I don't like throwing up a predictions video on Saturday when people only have 1 day to watch it before the pay-per-view. It results in less views, and I'm just not a fan of doing it that way. So I feel like we're probably going to start recording on Wednesdays now, I'm thinking. But I'm not sure yet. I'm going to have to talk with everybody about the scheduling because it is going to throw off, the routine that I've had here recording videos for the past several years. Yeah, next week's going to be a very interesting week in wrestling. We got Raw, SmackDown, we got NXT, the launch of AEW Dynamite. We got Hell in the Cell on that Sunday, so there'll be predictions. Going to be a lot of content. If you enjoy the video, please subscribe. Tell a friend, click on that notification button so you can get updated with the latest news and rumors. And of course, stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest regarding the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. And don't forget, myself and Jeff Meacham will be doing a live recap in LA of the WWE SmackDown premiere on Fox. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And that's a loaded show too. You got the Kevin Owens, Shane McMahon ladder match. You got the WWE title where hopefully Brock Lesnar defeats Kofi Kingston. And Virtue says, unless Jeff cancels. Well, Jeff's going to be there with me and he paid for his ticket. So I think it's a safe bet Jeff's going to be there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I enjoy your interactions in the chat room, and thank you to everyone for watching on demand. I appreciate it very much. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you all next time.